everyone, Eunice here. Welcome to this tutorial where we'll draw a cat and a donut hybrid. Why we're doing it? Because it's cute, because it's adorable, because it's a cat, because it's a donut, and we all like these things. And it's definitely not because I don't know how to draw normal things anymore. Anyways, let's begin by deciding what kind of white canvas is going to be scaring us today. We're using a standard square canvas from Procreate. Pixel width and pixel height set at 2048 pixels. DPI are at 300 and color profile set as sRGB with this number. When it's all done, hitting down, going and facing our fears by taking a look at our white canvas, and then we will start our preparational part. So firstly, for our preparational part, we will need to go under the description and download all the materials mentioned in this tutorial. So all the brushes and the color palette. When you did it, let's continue by going to our brush library. We'll go to the calligraphy folder and select monoline brush. As we are creating a kawaii illustration, we want all of our lines to be very smooth, so let's tap on the brush, go inside the brush studio, go under stabilization, and you can set the amount of streamline and amount of stabilization that we will need to adjust the same way as you see it right now onto your screen, because you don't want to waste your time for trying it out onto the drawing pad and deciding what you want to achieve here. So when you are done with this task, let's hit down over our top right. One more time, going back to our canvas and continuing by going to our layers. Go into the background color layer, go into this color palette that you downloaded, going under colors and selecting the background color. It's not that white anymore, so it's not that scary. Let's continue by going to our color palette, going under cards, and we will pick the first color that we'll use to create one guiding line that we will need for this illustration. So let's pick the red color, and we will go to the size slider and we will set it to something around 6%. For the next move, we will need two hands, so we will go and create a straight line going like that through our canvas. We'll hold our Apple Pencil and we will hold one of our fingers on the screen. When you did it, we will need to position it in the center, so go into our arrow key on the top left, going under uniform and selecting snapping right here into the settings. When you did it, let's go hold our Apple Pencil and we will be looking for the orange line that is horizontal. When you found it and positioned your line onto this guiding line, let's hit our arrow key one more time to go away from this mode, and then we will go to our layers, tap onto the N icon here, and we will adjust the opacity to the level that will be suitable for us. So when you found this level, tap onto this layer and let's create one more layer on top. And then we will go to our color palettes to switch the color to red orange. And when all the preparations are done, we are ready finally to start creating our actual illustration. So let's begin by using the same brush, the same size, the color that we picked, by going to our canvas, and we will create a line like that. So it doesn't matter how wobbly it is, hold it at the ends, that way we can hide our shaky hands right here. So we will snap the shape to a better one, and we also will put one of our fingers on the screen to make it a straight and very polished little circle right here. Adjust the size by moving your Apple Pencil from side to side, so let's go pretty big right here. When you are done, lift up everything, and one more time, let's go to our favorite tool, which is our arrow key, going under uniform, snapping is on, holding our Apple Pencil, and we are looking for the orange line, but this time the vertical one. When you found it, move your shape slightly down so we will have more space on top than we have on the bottom. And when you have the position like that, tap onto the arrow key and let's go and work a little bit more onto the front part of our donut. So firstly, go into our layers, swiping the layer with the circle from right to left and choosing duplicate. When we have the second copy, going again to our favorite tool, which is our arrow key, uniform method, going to the bottom little node in the center and moving the shape slightly up. So we'll need to have a bit of a space between these shapes, and the line on the top is the same as we have on the first shape. So when you have the result like that, let's tap onto our arrow key to go away from this mode, and then let's go and turn this first circle that we had into a cat. So what we need to do is to go back to our layers. We will go to our layer on the bottom, so our layer with the first shape. When it is selected, we will do one more thing to create two elements at the same time. So we will need to go to our range icon on the top left. We are going under canvas and we are toggling drawing guide. Going under edit drawing guide and on the bottom panel, we will select the option symmetry. Don't touch anything here. We will hit down over our top right and then we will go over one of the sides on the top. We will put the dot like that and we will connect this dot with the first shape that we had. So you can hold your line at the end. You can adjust the placement of the line. Go to the editing mode right here. If you want to adjust the curvature, play around with the nodes. When you are done with it, go to the opposite side and create the second half of our ear right here. So again, hold the line, go to the editing mode, play around with the nodes. When you are satisfied with everything, let's go and work onto this corner onto the bottom left. So we will create a curve instead of this very straight corner. So again, with one line, creating the shape. And then when we have this shape, go into our eraser, adjusting the size of the eraser and making the line like that. So with the eraser, use the same options that you are using with the brush. Hold your line, go to the editing mode if you want to adjust the curvature. When you have a little cut like that, let's adjust the size of the brush and go in toward this line that we have on the bottom and we will completely erase it. So very carefully go to the side where you have the second part of the ear and very nicely erase everything that you don't need. So when we have the result like that, let's get back to our brush and let's go inside the ears and we will create the inner parts. So step a bit from the first line and repeat the shapes that you have on the top. So the same way as before with two lines, holding them and the end creating our shape right here. Now when we have the result like that, we will go and work onto our donut hole right here, and we don't want to create something boring right here. We want to create a peculiar shape. So let's do the following. We will go to our slider with the size and we will set it to 4% and we will go underneath this line that we have in the center and we will create a shape like that. So with one line, creating a shape of the ellipse, holding it at the end, trying to make it pretty flat. If you want to adjust it, hold it at the end, go to the editing mode and play around with the shape so you can make it a little bit more open or maybe position it differently. It's up to you. When you have the shape like that, let's tap on the screen and let's go toward the top and we will elongate these lines to create a softer shape. So if you need to try it out a couple of times to create a nicer shape, go and do it in a way that you do it. So when you have the result like that, let's go to the bottom and let's create the similar shape right here. And when we have these two lines on the top and on the bottom, we will grab our eraser. We will adjust the size of it so we can work precisely onto some of the shapes right here. And we will go and completely erase everything that we have inside. So probably it will be easier to go to the connections that we have right here between our shapes and work on them firstly. So with the smaller size of the brush, of our eraser, erasing the parts that we have here, making cuts, and then very easily going towards these middle parts and erasing them. Now, when we have the shape like that, we will need to add some thickness to it. So let's go and use the instrument icon on the top left. We have this panel on the bottom. If the color fill is turned on, we will turn it off. We will use the freehand method, and with the freehand method, we will go like that, loop the shape around, select it, and then use 3 fingers. Swiping down from top to the bottom using the option copy, and then one more time, 3 fingers, swiping down and using the option paste. Now, when we have this bounding box, we have a copy of this element. So we are again using our uniform method. Snapping is on, going to the bottom middle node and dragging the shape up. Decide onto the thickness of this element. And when you are done, tap onto the arrow key to close this window. And then let's get back to our layers and we'll merge all of these 3 layers together. So using one of the fingers on the layer on the top, another on the layer on the bottom, and making a pinch movement like that. Now, when we have the base like that, let's go and create the facial features. So firstly, switching the color to eyes and mouth and getting back to the size of the brush of 6%. Now, going above this line that we have as our guiding line, going to the symmetry line and creating half of the circle or half of the ellipse like that. Decide on the size. If you want to go to the 18 mode and adjust it, go and adjust it. You can move it slightly down. So find the placement and everything that you are looking up right here. And when you are done, tap on the screen If it's not happening from the first try it out one more time. So we will need to have a nice connection between the shapes. So again, hold your line in the end. If you need to adjust it, go to the editing mode, play around with the nodes right here. When we have the mouth, let's go and create the eyes. So for the eyes, go into our slider with the size and setting it to something around 85%. Now let's go from our mouth to the side and we will put one dot like that. So again, you will need to experiment with the position of this element. You can go closer to the mouth, you can go a little bit farther away from it. So find the placement for this element, and when you are done, get back to the previous size of the brush of 6%. And now to finish up with our facial features, let's create the cheeks. So for the cheeks, firstly, let's switch the color to cheeks, and when we did it, let's get back to the layers, create one more layer on top, and we will use the Symmetry Tool onto this layer too. So let's tap onto the new layer and select the option Draw Assist. When we did it, let's go underneath our eye, one of them, and we will create a shape of the ellipse. So the same way with one line, creating the shape, go into the editing mode, finding what we want to find right here. So create a more open shape, a little bit, maybe play with the placement. It's up to you. When you are done, tap on the screen and drag and drop the color inside. Now, when we are done with our facial features, let's go and add some peculiar little details inside our shapes. So firstly, we will get back to our layers, getting back to our layer with our main shape and creating one more layer on top. Now, if you downloaded the folders with the brushes, let's go and find them. So we will need to go to the brush library. We will find the stems, simple stems brushes right here, and we will be using the flowers that we have right here. So let's start with the flower number 3, and then we will change the color to this blue-green one. Change the size of the brush to your liking. I'm using 8%, and we will go over one of the sides and we will put the dot right here for our flower. We'll need to pay attention to how much pressure we are using right here for our dots with our flowers. We will need to have solid lines, so put enough pressure here. When you have the first flower, let's go and change the color to, well, actually, it's not the color. Let's firstly change the brush. So we will go and select flower number 1. And then when we have the brush, let's go and change the color to soft orange. With the soft orange color, with the, again, 8% of the brush, let's go toward the opposite side and create the second little flower right here. Change the color to the orange right here. And let's change the brush to flower number 2. With this brush, we will go toward the bottom right and we'll put another flower here. The size was, again, 7 or 8%. So when we have these 3 flowers, let's change the color for light grayish yellow, and let's select this flower number 4, which is a little bit weirdly looking. So when we have it, let's go toward the bottom and put another flower right here. We can't see it clearly right now, but we will see it later on. So now when we are done with our flowers, let's add a bit of a sparkles or speckles or some kind of particles right here. We will again go to our brush library and we will find the brush with title Double Monoline. Let's change the color to green firstly. The size of the brush is 25%. So we'll go to some blank spaces and we will start to add these particles right here. So try not to overdo it, go to some blank spaces, as I mentioned before, and create a couple of these elements. Now, when we are done with the greenish elements, let's switch the color to pink, and let's again go and add a couple more of these details. Don't try to overthink it and don't try to overdo it. Go to the blank spaces and add a couple of these details. Vary the position of them, vary the direction of them. When you are done with these reddish elements, let's change the color to red-orange and put another one right here near the flower that is kind of weird. When we did it, we are done with our lines, so we can move on to the next part with our color blocking. So let's begin this part by going to our layers, and we will tap onto the layer with the flowers and we will use the option merge down. Now, as we want to add the colors on separate layers, let's tap on our layer with the lines and use the option reference. When we did it, going back to our line that we have as our guiding line, we actually don't need it anymore, so let's hide it by tapping onto the check mark. And let's create one more layer from here. Now, go into our color palette, selecting base color, dragging it toward the middle part. When we did it, going back to the layers, creating one more layer on top, changing the color to soft orange and dragging it to this back part. Also, we'll need to drag it right here to the middle. And then when we did it, let's switch the color to ears and recolor the inner parts of the ears too. Now, let's again get back to our layers and create one more layer on top, and we will be recoloring our flowers and the particles. So firstly, changing the color to grayish green, and with this grayish green color, let's go to one of the flowers with the green outlines, and then we will use the option continue filling. If it disappeared, one more time, drag the color to one of the areas, and then let's go zoom in our canvas, and we will go through all of these elements where we have the green outlines, and we will put the color inside by tapping on these places. When we did it without tapping onto the check mark, let's get back to our color palette and let's select the frosting color. With the frosting color, we will go to these pinkish elements and we will recolor them too. And then you can switch the color to, for example, base, and let's go toward this one orange outline right here, and we'll recolor it. And also we'll go to all of these inside parts of our flowers, and we'll recolor them. Also, we can go to this flower that we have on the bottom and recolor the petals. And then let's switch the color to the color with the title light grayish yellow, recolor the flower on the top, and then switch the color to white and recolor this flower on the bottom. When you did it, the last thing that we will need to do is to go and add some kind of frosting on the bottom for this part. So let's get back to our brush library, going again to the calligraphy folder, selecting our monoline brush, go into the layers, and we don't need reference anymore, so let's go select this layer, tap on it, and turn off reference by selecting it from the list. Now, when we did it, let's go to the main shape that we have right here. Let's create one more layer on top, tap on this layer and use the option clipping mask. That way we'll be able to stay inside the shape. So we will go to our color palettes and switch the color to frosting, and we'll go to the bottom part and we will create the wavy line right here to create some peculiar little shape of the frosting. Loop it around so you don't have any gaps into this shape and drag and drop the color inside this area. When you have the result like that, when you like it, we are done with our base colors. So let's move on to shading and highlights. Let's start by going to our layers, and from where we are right now, let's create one more layer. Let's again tap on it, let's select clipping mask, and as we are starting with our shadows, let's go and change the blending mode. So we'll tap onto the N icon and we will choose multiply blending mode. For the opacity, let's go with something around 50%, and then we will change the color to this magenta one. We will go with our monoline brush toward the bottom part and we will create a shape like that. So creating half of the circle with one line, holding it at the end, and if you need to adjust the line, go to this editing mode on the top and adjust it. So we will need to have more space for our shadow on the right and a little bit less space onto the left. So play around with the position of the shadow, and when you are satisfied with it, tap on the screen, loop it around, and we will drag and drop the color inside. When you did it, we also can go and adjust these parts right here on the top and recolor them. So firstly, let's switch the color to, for example, cheeks, and then we will go back to our layers, tap onto the layer where we have our shadow and use the option alpha lock. Now, very easily, we will go manually to these areas on the top where we have this pinkish little outline, not the outline, but the shadow, and we will go and manually recolor these parts. So very boldly go with your brush with the bigger size of it and recolor it. Go to the opposite side if you have some element here and recolor it too. Now, when we have the result like that, let's go and add the shadows underneath the flowers and all these little particles. So what we are going to be doing, we will go to our layers and we will go and find our layer with these flowers, and we'll make a copy of it by swiping the layer from right to left and choosing duplicate. Now we have two copies. We will grab one of them and drag it to the bottom, so above this layer where we have our shadow, and we will need to do a couple of more things. So let's tap onto this layer and use the option select, and then we will use this color that we have right now selected for this top part, and we will select color fill onto this bottom panel. When we did it, let's deselect everything by tapping onto the S ribbon icon. If you take a look at your layers right now, you will see that everything that you have right here is recolored with one color, and that's exactly what we need. Let's tap onto the N icon and change the blending mode to multiply, and let's go with something around maybe 40% of opacity. And then we will go to our favorite tool, our arrow key, uniform method, and we will drag everything slightly down toward the right. So find the placement for these elements, and when you have it, let's tap onto our arrow key. If you don't like some shadow right here, we can go and adjust them manually by going to the Magic Wand tool and going under Liquify. Use the option Push, use the size slider, and let's go to some of the areas and we will drag them more towards the bottom right. So play around with the position of these elements, and when you are satisfied with everything here, let's tap onto our adjustments twice. Now, when we have the result like that, let's go and decide whether we like the amount of opacity right here. If you want to change it, tap onto the M icon and play with it from this slider. When you are satisfied with everything here, let's go and add the highlights to this front area. So we will create one more layer on top, tap on it and select Clipping Mask. We will go to the N icon and change the blending mode to overlay. And when we did it, we will also change the color to light grayish yellow. Now we will go to the brush library, we'll go to the airbrushing folder and select soft blend brush. Change the opacity of this brush to something around 20%, adjust the size of the brush. We will need to go inside this shape and we will create some kind of a glowing effect right here. So hold your line at the end, make sure that it is a circular shape, so you can hold one of your fingers on the screen. You also can go to the editing mode and play around with the placement for this element. When you found the placement and everything, tap on the screen and let's decide onto the overall opacity level of this element. So let's get back to our layers. Let's go and tap on the O icon and maybe adjust the opacity slightly to something around 75%. And when we have it, let's go and make it even more glowing. So we will create one more layer on top, tap on it, Clipping Mask, changing the opacity. Well, if you want to go with opacity first, let's change it to something around 90% and let's change the blending mode to overlay one more time. Let's change the color to white, and we also will go to our brush library and we will go to the calligraphy folder, but we will choose script brush. With the script brush, you can go with any percentage of opacity, doesn't matter here. We will go toward this shape that we've created for our highlights and we will go along it and we will create more highlights here. So going along this shape and starting to add some dots, some peculiar little shapes like that. Go with the bigger size of the brush to create more peculiar shapes. You can go through all of these elements or only to the top or only to the bottom. It's up to you. You can go a little bit outside the shape and add more particles here in the shape of the highlights. So play around and create some peculiar little details right here. Try again not to overdo it, but if you want to overdo it, it's up to you. Create a very shiny illustration if you prefer it. When you have the result like that with the same brush and with the same color, let's go over the top left and we will create a big highlight here. So again, hold your line and the end, go to the editing mode if you need to. Play around with the placement and with the curvature if you need to again, and tap on the screen when you are ready. Now, when we have everything set in that way, let's continue by going to our layers and we will go to our next layer to start adding the shadows and highlights here too. So let's create one more layer on top, tap on it, select Clipping Mask, changing the blending mode to multiply, changing the opacity to something around 50-55%, go into our color palettes to change the color to cheeks, for example. And with this color, let's go firstly towards the ears and we will add the shadows here. So create a little shadow like that and go towards the bottom right part to kind of fully recolor everything that you have right here. So let's recolor it in that way, and when we have it, we also could go toward the ear that we have onto the opposite side and create slight shadow right here too. If you don't like how this brush behaves, you are welcome to go back to your monoline brush to create smoother shapes right here. So let's go and create a shadow right here. Let's adjust the size of the brush and go inside the ears and create some shadows here too. Follow the natural direction of these elements and go towards this opposite side and create a shadow here too. Now, when you have the shadow right here, let's go towards the inside part and let's add the shadow here too. But before that, we will switch the color to red orange and we will go manually with the bigger size of the brush and add the shadow here. So going like that and adding the shadow in that way. Now, when we have the result like that, let's also go and add some highlights to this element. So firstly, go into our layers, creating one more layer on top, tapping on it, selecting clipping mask, changing blending mode to overlay. Let's again go maybe with something around 90% and changing the color to white. With this color, go into the same site where we have the highlights onto our main shape and starting to add the highlights here too. So for example, let's start with our ear, and we also could go toward this part right here onto our right, and we can add a bit of the highlight here too. So go along the shape that you have right here and create a highlight. Connect it nicely with the shape on the top, and also when you have this highlight onto one of the ears, let's go toward the opposite side and let's create a highlight here too. If you want to go with maybe a bit of a peculiar shape right here, you can go and continue creating a highlight right here on the top of the ear. And when we have the result like that, let's go and work onto our additional elements. So we will need to do the same thing. We are starting with shadows and then adding the highlights. So firstly, go into our layers, finding this layer with our little shapes, creating one more layer on top, tapping, clipping mask, tapping on the N icon and selecting multiply blending mode. Let's go with something around 25% of opacity and let's go and find this cyan blue color firstly. Change the size of the brush and let's go over the greenish elements firstly, and we have some kind of a cheat sheet right here because we know where we need to put our shadows. So going along all of these petals where we have the shadows underneath them, and we are starting to put these little shadows here too. If you want to go right here and add a bit of a shadow underneath the middle part of the flower, let's go and add the shadow here. And let's continue by going through all of these greenish elements, and we will go and start to add the shadows here. So repeat the same placement for these shadows that you have for your main shapes, your main shadows right here. And when you are done with the green parts, let's go and switch the color to magenta or magenta pink if you prefer. And let's go through all of the pink elements and put the shadows to them too. So repeating the same steps that we did with our greenish elements, you also could go to this orange element right here on the bottom and you can add the shadow with this color that you are using right now. When you are done with it, let's change the color to, for example, soft orange, and let's go through all of these yellowy elements. If this color is not enough, change it to something slightly brighter, so for example orange, and with this color let's go and try out to create our shadows again. So again, go into the same sides where we have our main shadows and going through all of these yellowish elements right here. So let's go to this flower on the top and let's create the shadow right here onto the petals too. When you are done with this flower, let's go and change the color, for example, to something softer, either beige or a soft orange. And let's go toward this very bright flower that we have on the bottom and let's add a bit of a shadow to the petals and everything here too. So now when you have the result like that, we are done with our shadows. If you want to adjust the opacity level, you are welcome to go and do that. When you are done, let's create one more layer on top and let's tap on it and let's create clipping mask to change the blending mode to overlay and change the color to white and go to the opposite side from our shadows and start to add the highlights here. So go through all of the elements that you have right here and start adding your highlights in the shapes of some dots and maybe some peculiar little details. You also could go to this folder that you downloaded, to all of the folders, and maybe take a look at what we have right here. And you can go to the elements right here and start to add the highlights with these brushes. So let's go through all of these elements and let's start adding our highlights. So when we are done with this task, I think that I've missed a little shadow right here, so let's keep it as it is. Let's keep it real. When we are done with these elements, let's go and work onto some final touches. So for the final touches, let's get back to our list and find our layer with the lines. When we did it, let's create one more layer on top. Let's tap on the layer and select clipping mask. We're using our white color and we will go adjust the size of the brush to something around 20%. And we will go to our eyes and put the dots toward the top parts. So that way we will create some highlights. When we did it, let's get back to our layers. Let's get back to the previous layer and we will create one more layer from here. Now let's tap onto this layer and select Drawing Assist, and then we will change the color to red and change the brush to airbrush and soft blend. Going toward the bottom parts of our eyes with a smaller size of the brush and starting to add some glow right here. So when you are done with this glow, the very final thing that we will add right here will be softening up some lines. So let's get back to our layers and create one more layer above our layer with our highlights. So creating one more layer, tapping on it and selecting clipping mask. Now, as we are ready with our red color right here, let's go adjust the size of the brush and we will go over the bottom part and we will create some kind of a darkish effect right here for our lines. So that way we will see more clearly what we have right here. And when we are done with the red part, let's go to our color palettes and select soft orange color, and we will go to some light areas right here, maybe with slightly smaller size of the brush. And we will go and start softening up our lines right here. So we will need to pay attention to the connection between these parts that we are working on right now. So we will need to have very smooth transitions between the colors. Go and try to do that. If you want to go to some other areas and recolor them, maybe soften up some flowers, lines or something, you are welcome to go and do that. If you want to go a little bit extra, we can go and do one more thing. So we will go to our layers, go above all the layers that we have right here, create one more layer on top, change the color to, for example, frosting, and let's go to our folder with the brushes. We will go to Unistem brushes and we will use the Sparkle Full Steel brush. Going outside the shapes and starting to add some sparkles here. So go and add a couple of these details. Again, try not to overdo it. Go with different sizes for these elements. Go, if you want to, change the brush to, for example, Chubby Full Steel, and go closer to this first element that you've added and add a couple more details with this new brush. And when you are done with this task, we are done with our illustration. I hope you are proud of your result. Share it on socials and tag me so I can see your beautiful creations. And if you enjoyed this video, you can find more similar Kawaii tutorials on my Skillshare or on Patreon at the link in the description. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next tutorial.